Every NFL quarterback took a different route to success. Some were top-ranked players through the whole process, but others had to fight every step of the way just to go to the next level. In this video, I want to look at the top quarterback prospects in the upcoming 2020 NFL Draft and how good they were in high school. Let's start this off light with Jacob Eason, currently ranked as the 5th quarterback in the draft according to Sports Illustrated. This season as a junior at the University of Washington, he threw for over 3,100 yards and 23 touchdowns. He's getting a lot of attention going into the draft for his size at 6'6", as well as his arm talent. He's for sure going to be one of the first 10 quarterbacks off the board. In 13 games as a senior at Lake Stevens High School, he threw for 3,585 yards and 43 touchdowns. He graduated as the number 1 player in Washington, the number 1 pocket passing quarterback, and the 13th player in the country. He was initially at Georgia, but suffered a knee injury in his sophomore year. Following this injury, freshman Fromm took over as the starter and remained even after Eason's recovery. Luckily for him, he was able to get back on track once transferring to his home state Washington Huskies. Speaking of Fromm, he's up next, currently ranked as the 6th quarterback in the draft. In his junior season at Georgia, he threw for over 2,800 yards and 24 touchdowns. It's not a question that he's going to get drafted, but before coming to Georgia, Fromm dominated at Houston County High School, where he threw for almost 13,000 yards and 116 touchdowns in his career. The 6'2" quarterback impressed enough for him to be ranked as the 44th player in the country and 3rd ranked pro-style quarterback according to 24/7 Sports. As a freshman, he brought Georgia to the national championship and since has remained a top quarterback in the country. Then we have a fan favorite, an early frontrunner for the Heisman, Jalen Hurts. Hurts is the top dual-threat quarterback in this draft class after a senior season at Oklahoma, where he threw for over 3,800 yards and 32 touchdowns to go along with 1,300 yards and 20 touchdowns on the ground. Absolutely insane. It's going to be very interesting to see where he lands, but right now is ranked as the 7th quarterback in the class. As a senior in high school, Jalen Hurts threw for 2,300 yards and 26 touchdowns to go along with 1,400 yards and 25 touchdowns on the ground. Despite these insane numbers, he was only ranked as the 61st player in Texas and the 13th dual-threat quarterback in the country. He had an up-and-down journey in college, going from the starting quarterback of a national championship team, then getting replaced in the national championship at halftime for a freshman, then having to transfer, but this season has put himself back in position for a nice payday later this month. Then we've got a guy that's climbed up the board recently, and the rumors are rumbling that he could potentially hear his name in the first round of the draft, and that's Utah State quarterback Jordan Love. As a sophomore a year ago, he threw for 3,600 yards and 32 touchdowns to just 6 interceptions. His numbers weren't as great this season, but his potential is catching the eye of a lot of NFL front offices. Before becoming a college star, Love went to Liberty High School, where as a senior, he threw for just 2,100 yards and 24 touchdowns to go along with 800 yards and 8 touchdowns on the ground. Not insane, and it didn't translate to a lot of attention for the 6'3" quarterback, as he graduated as a 2-star recruit and just the 169th player in the state and 62nd dual-threat quarterback in the country. Pretty inspiring to see him go from under-recruited to potentially a first-round pick. 6'6" Oregon quarterback Justin Herbert is on pace to be a top 15 pick in the upcoming draft after a senior season where he threw for 3,500 yards and 32 touchdowns to just 6 interceptions. A lot of rumblings are that he could potentially be the Chargers guy with the 6th pick. The NFL didn't always look like it was a guarantee for Herbert. As a senior at Eugene Sheldon High School, he threw for 3,100 yards and 37 touchdowns and 540 yards and 10 touchdowns on the ground. While he graduated as a 3-star prospect, he was just the 26th pocket passer in the country and didn't have many major D1 offers. Luckily, he had the opportunity with his home state school, and well, the rest is history. Now we enter the top tier of quarterbacks in the draft, beginning with Alabama QB Tua Tagovailoa. Tua took home a national championship in his freshman season, then threw for an insane 4,000 yards and 43 touchdowns as a sophomore. Sadly, this season was cut short due to injury. Without that injury, he would have a real case for the number 1 pick in the draft. As of now, Tua is all over the place when it comes to mock drafts, but is commonly projected as a top 5 selection. Tua's been expected to make it to the league for a while now. He graduated from St. Louis School in Hawaii as the 57th player in the nation, the number 1 player in the state, and number 1 dual threat quarterback. If he can stay healthy, Tua could really be a special player in the NFL. Lastly, we've got the projected #1 pick in the draft and Heisman Trophy winner Joe Burrow, who just finished one of the greatest seasons in college football history, throwing for almost 5,700 yards and 60 touchdowns and just 6 interceptions. He also had 370 yards on the ground and another 5 touchdowns. There are rumblings that teams such as the Dolphins could be moving up to #1, but regardless of who is there, Burrow will be the #1 pick in the draft. During his career at Athens High School, Burrow threw for over 11,000 yards and 157 touchdowns and over 2,000 yards and 27 touchdowns on the ground. He graduated as Ohio Mr. Football, the 298th player in the country and 9th dual threat quarterback in the class of 2015. He signed on to go to Ohio State, but after losing the battle for the starting position, he transferred to LSU for his junior season. He had a solid year, but by no means was in the conversation to be a top pick in the 2020 draft. This season, he climbed the draft board faster and in a shorter period of time than just about anyone in the history of the draft. Pretty inspirational story. One of the things I love about football compared to a sport like basketball is that players can still prove themselves worth a top selection years after graduating high school. In the one-and-done era of basketball, the clock just ticks too fast. But that's the end of it, you guys. You guys tell me your thoughts in the comments below. If you liked the video, make sure you like and subscribe, and peace.